Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for checking out another video. So I've been working away on the 911 development and the Cayman development, and I'm gonna have some more videos for you guys soon. But in the meantime, one of my friends reached out and he had something for sale, and it was a really good deal, so I picked it up, and why don't I show you? So if you guys have seen any of my other videos, you know I like RSX Type S's, and I really like the Arctic Blue Pearl RSX Type S. So my friend reached out and said he had this one for sale. Unfortunately, if you look a little closer, it's not in such great shape, and there's a little problem here at the front. It was in a slight accident, so I have no intention of trying to fix this car, but what I do want to do with it is pull out its drivetrain. It is a perfect candidate for a donor car for a swap. It's 2003 RSX Type S. It is completely stock, and I'm always in need of swaps and parts for K-series swaps, and the plan is to take its drivetrain out and possibly just scrap the body or part the rest of it out. I have a friend that might take the shell and try to rebuild it because he has a drivetrain he wants to put in an RSX, but that's a whole other story. The reason why I'm making this video is because this is like a perfectly good running RSX Type S. The rad is broken from the front end accident, but the drivetrain is in perfect shape, and it is completely stock, like stock airbox, stock exhaust system, stock ECU. And you very rarely see a completely stock RSX Type S. Most of them have been heavily modified now, or realistically, most of them are long gone. So I thought maybe I should put the RSX on my dyno before I go and take it apart. I'd like to get a baseline run of what a completely stock RSX Type S makes. Through the stock intake, through the stock exhaust, stock ECU. Because a lot of times when I'm done tuning a car, people want to know, like, how much power have I made over top of, say, a stock setup. So it'll be good to have a dynograph of a completely stock one. But in order to do that, I'm gonna have to get this thing up and running. So I'm gonna have to track down a rad, because this one's obviously broken from the accident. I have to track down a battery. I could probably just borrow that from my EG Civic. And I'm gonna order a belt for it, because at some point someone cut the belt. I believe they cut it. I'm not sure why it's off. Hopefully nothing's broken in there. But so I'm gonna get started taking all these broken body panels off and figuring out how best to address the crushed rad support. And then we'll see if we can get this thing up and running. All right, guys, so I actually went ahead and kind of removed most of the damaged parts from the accident, pulled out the broken radiator and all the bracketry and bits and pieces. I kind of actually just wanted to see how far or how deep the accident went and make sure it didn't hurt the engine in any way. And it seems like everything is good. The only casualty appears to be the TPS. It seems to have, when the radiator got pushed in, it seems to have smashed the TPS, but I can actually replace that. That's not a big deal. So I went ahead and installed my Civic battery, and I think we're ready to start it up. There's no coolant, no rad, so it's just gonna be a short startup just to make sure the engine is running properly and not making any horrible noises. Then I think I'm gonna pull it up onto the lift so that I can lift it up in the air and take a look underneath. All right, well, it took a little bit to get it going, but not surprising. This car's been sitting for a while. Once it finally started up, it actually sounded pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that. But why don't we lift it up and take a look underneath? All right, car up in the air. It's pretty clean under here, guys. This is an Ontario car, and our cars rust. There's so much salt put down in our roads, so there's a bit of surface rust, but for a 2003 that looks like it's been winter driven, it is in pretty good shape. And it's all stock. I don't know if this is stock original cat. I haven't seen a stock original RSX Type S cat in a long time, maybe ever. So either way, it's got a cat, it's got a stock exhaust system. It says Honda on it, so stock Honda exhaust. So yeah, the plan is to fix the rad, get this thing up and running properly. I'm probably gonna have to put some new gas in it because I think it's been sitting for quite a while. So I'll put some fresh gas in it, get a rad in it, top it up with coolant, bleed the cooling system, fix the TPS, and then we should do some dyno pulls and see what this car makes as is. So I'm gonna try to take care of all that stuff now. All right, guys, so it's a few days later. I took care of installing a new rad, installing a new throttle position sensor, put some new fresh gas in the car because it was kind of hard to start at first, and that could have been from some old stale gas. I don't know how long this car sat before I tried to start it up, so I don't know. The car starts great now. Starts up great, sounds really quiet. This engine seems to run well now with its fresh gas. It is a very quiet engine. I'm not used to cars this quiet. Every car that comes to me has some sort of loud exhaust on it, so all you can hear is the engine, and it sounds pretty quiet, pretty healthy. So I'm curious to see how much this thing is gonna make on the dyno. The plan is run it as is, stock intake box, full stock exhaust system, and then I have this short ram sort of type intake that I'm gonna install temporarily. Then I think I will disconnect the exhaust in maybe stages. Maybe I'll just disconnect the rear of the exhaust, then I'll maybe disconnect the cat and do open header. And then all said and done, I'm going to install a K-Pro and upload a tune, and we'll see how much power a K20 makes each step of the way. So why don't I get it strapped down to the dyno and get started. All right, guys, car is all strapped down, ready to go. It's warming up, it's running. It is so quiet, so quiet. I'm not used to this. All the cars I tune are so loud. I'm not even gonna have to wear hearing protection. Anyways, car is up and running, warming up, and we are about to do the baseline pulls, all stock. I'm very curious to see what it should make. I'll let the car continue to warm up, make sure it's up to operating temperature, and then we'll probably do like 2 or 3 pulls and see what the car puts down all stock. All right, so I did 3 dyno pulls, 3 back-to-back dyno pulls. I waited about a minute or so in between each dyno pull to make sure the temperatures were stabilized. And I have all 3 dyno pulls up here on the screen, and the car put down 189, 190, 189 horse, and 138, 140, 140 torque for each pull. Red is the first pull, blue is the second, green is the third, and they are all very consistent. You can see we're VTEC engaged at call it 5,800 RPM, and hard red line right at 8,000 RPM. I don't know, it's pretty good. I think I was actually expecting much less horsepower than this. This seems like it's a pretty healthy engine. So, next steps. I'm going to make some sort of intake system for this, and I wanted to put that intake I showed earlier on it, but it might be a tight fit with the battery and the rad hose. So I might actually just try to remove the stock air box for now and use the stock air intake arm. Doing so should act kind of like a short ram intake system, and we'll see if there's any gains to be had by removing the stock air box and seeing how restrictive that thing is. So let me take care of that and I'll show you what we end up with. Okay, so I've removed the top of the air intake box, and you can see now it's kind of like a short ram. This is basically like a 3-inch inlet, and it transitions nicely into the throttle body. So doing this should allow the engine to breathe freely, removing any restriction from the factory air box. And I don't know, let's do some pulls and see how much the engine makes with the intake open like this. All right, so I did 2 dyno pulls with the open intake air box, and it made a little bit more power. It made, call it 5-6 horsepower. The last 2 pulls here are the new ones with the open intake box, and we hit basically 196, so 195.9 and then 196.3. Torque-wise, 142 and 143. Again, very consistent. VTEC engaged so much more aggressively now with the intake box open. You can actually hear VTEC engage very loudly inside the car. I hope the camera picked it up. I would be surprised if it didn't. With the previous pulls, with the air box all connected, you could barely hear VTEC from inside the car. With the air box open this way, VTEC is extremely loud, and you can see the big jump in power when VTEC engages. So, all right, so intake air testing out of the way. I'm gonna move on and we're gonna mess with the exhaust. So in order to take care of the exhaust, I gotta unstrap the car, pull it back, lift it back up, and I'm gonna take a look and see where it makes the most sense to disconnect it. But let's get up in the air and take a look. Okay, car up in the air. I did take a peek, and I think I have a plan on what to do. I can disconnect the exhaust from this flange right after the cat. The bolts are crazy rusty, so I probably have to break them all to get it undone. And we'll see how that goes. Worst case scenario, I have to use a Sawzall and cut it. Once I've done that, then we'll do a couple pulls with just the cat in place, but no exhaust system, to kind of simulate a free-flowing cat back exhaust. Once we're done that, then I think I'm gonna try to disconnect the bolts for the catalytic converter at the downpipe and see if we can just run open downpipe, open header basically, and see how much power that frees up. So let me see if I can disconnect this flange here. All right, success. I got the exhaust all undone. So you can see, disconnected it at the flange. You can actually see in there, there's still a stock cat. And so yeah, we're gonna run it as is now. Basically completely open after the cat to try to simulate a very high flow cat back exhaust, because unfortunately I just don't have a cat back exhaust lying around for RSX, so this will have to do. So yeah, We're gonna run it as is with the cat in there, and we'll see if removing or disconnecting the exhaust system, this factory one, frees up any additional horsepower. So let's find out. All right, car's strapped back down. Exhaust is open. It is significantly louder now. So let's see how much power it makes with the exhaust all undone. All right, 2 pulls done back to back with the exhaust disconnected at the cat. Still with the cat bolted up, so the exhaust has to go through the stock header and through the stock cat. 2 pulls, I have them up here on the screen. 199 and 201, basically 202 horse, and then 144 and 144 torque. All the gains have been realized up top in the peak range. Down in the lower range, horsepower and torque are basically the same, but up top, it starts picking up a lot more because the engine can breathe better with the open intake and open exhaust. So, next step, I'm gonna try to unbolt the stock cat and run open stock header, and we'll see if it picks up even more power doing that. All right, got the cat off. It is just an open stock header now. As you can see, stock exhaust is no longer connected to the open stock header. So this is gonna simulate a very high flow header setup and a very high flow exhaust system. So I'm curious to see how much more power it will make now that it doesn't have the cat connected to the exhaust system. So let's find out. All right, car's back on the dyno, strapped down with open header, no cat. It is extremely loud now. This is not my favorite thing to do. It is, I'm curious to see how much power it makes, but I don't know, I dislike tuning extremely loud cars. But this is in the name of science to see how much power the cat was holding it back. So why don't I get to the dyno pulls and see what it makes. All right, 2 extremely loud dyno pulls, and they technically didn't really make any power. The last 2 pulls with open stock header, no cat, only made basically 200.8, 201, same torque, 144, 144. Graphs look basically identical to the previous ones. The reason for no additional horsepower, I believe, is because we're still running on a stock ECU. The stock tune is probably making the engine run lean now. It can breathe a lot better, but it's not compensating and adding any extra fuel. So my next step is to install a K-Pro I'm gonna put a K-Pro in the car, upload a base map, and we're gonna see if the car makes any more power with a base map, or if this is truly just all the power that this engine has in it with these makeshift mods. So I'm gonna load up one of my base maps and we'll do 2 more pulls and we'll see what this thing makes all said and done. All right, all done with the extremely loud dyno pulls. I'm glad that is over, but I did 2 dyno pulls with one of my base maps loaded onto a K-Pro. I did no tuning, just basically a base map that I use for starting a dyno tune on a similar setup, basically like a bolt-on setup with stock injectors for an RSX, because this is still stock injectors. But we've tried to simulate a free-flowing intake and exhaust setup as much as possible by opening up the airbox, disconnecting the stock cat, disconnecting the stock exhaust system. And so yeah, I did 2 dyno pulls and I have them up on the screen along with the 2 previous dyno pulls with the cat disconnected. So cat disconnected the top 2, 200 and 201. Cat disconnected with my base map, 207 and 209. Stock ECU, 144 torque. My base map, 154 torque. On my base map, I did engage VTEC earlier. VTEC engaged at, I think it was 46 or 47, and versus the something like 48 in the stock ECU. And that allowed the engine to make significantly more power everywhere. I did no tuning, but my base map does have more fuel in it than what the stock ECU would have, because it's designed for, or it's set up to be a starting point to tune a similar engine, a K20A2 with stock injectors, but with all the breathing modifications, so better intake, better exhaust. So right off the bat, it had a bunch more fuel, which is why I believe it made more power all around. So I'm gonna bring up a different graph, 1 second. All right, so up on the screen, I have basically the final before and after results. In red is one of the original dyno pulls with the car all stock. So stock intake, stock exhaust system all connected, stock ECU. It came in at, call it 190 horse, 140 foot-pounds torque. And in blue, I have the final dyno graph of intake open, exhaust system fully disconnected, just stock header, and my base map uploaded. And we ended up with 209 and 154. Significant gains throughout the upper rev range, even a little bit down low in the non-VTEC range, but interesting results. It made a little bit more power than I thought it would make all stock. I thought it'd be in the mid 180s realistically, but nonetheless, very interesting results. While I have this graph up on the screen, I thought I would take this opportunity to throw a couple more dyno graphs up on the screen. So give me 1 sec. Okay, up on the screen in green is an example of another RSX that I tuned, another K20A2, but this one basically has most of the parts that you would consider full bolt-on. It had 3-inch intake, RBC intake manifold, RDX injectors, Skunk 2 header, and 3-inch oval exhaust. So basically full bolt-on, and it ended up making 213 peak horse, 155 torque. So similar results. It actually lost a little bit of power down low, and it gained a bunch of power in the mid-range and the upper rev range, and I believe that is due to the RBC intake manifold, because the RBC intake manifold is great for mid to high RPM power, but you usually sacrifice a little bit of low-end torque in comparison to the stock RSX PRB intake manifold. So yeah, usually things are a trade-off in one way or another, but most people end up going with the RBC because it does make more peak power and sometimes more mid-range power. So 213 wheel horsepower, 155 foot-pounds torque, still out of a K20A2, but no point stopping there. Why don't I bring up another graph? All right, up on the screen in red is another K20A2 full bolt-on, but this time it has one of my favorite cams, the Drag Cartel 2.2 cams. And with the Drag Cartel 2.2 cams, completely internally stock K20A2 full bolt-ons, it made 241 and 166 foot-pounds torque. So with those cams, it did make significantly more power everywhere. Personally, I think this is a good example of what you can make on a completely internally stock K20 with a set of cams and have a car that is still very streetable. This was tuned on pump gas. You could drive it daily, nothing crazy. And this customer was super happy with his results. So I don't know, I could go all day. I have hundreds and hundreds of dynographs. I'm gonna throw up one more dynograph because people always like to compare K20 versus K24. So I'm gonna take a look and see what I have for a good K24 dynograph in an RSX. All right guys, last example for today. In red, the best dyno pull of today of the K20A2. In blue, a completely stock K24 bottom end, but with the upgraded Type S oil pump, and a K20A2 head with full bolt-on. So 3-inch intake, RBC intake, manifold RDX injectors, a good header, and a 3-inch exhaust. And the results kind of speak for themselves. So 224 horse, 183 foot-pounds torque out of the K20, K24 combo, and huge power gains everywhere in the power range. So people always ask all the time, what's the best bang for the buck? And I usually answer K24 bottom end because you gain a significant amount of torque. So I've kind of run out of time for today. I would love to go through as many dynographs as possible. These are only examples that I quickly found out of the hundreds of dynographs that I have, but hopefully you guys found this stuff interesting. If you have any questions, by all means, put them in the comments. I usually can't get around to answering the questions, but I do read them and I will try to address them in future videos. But as always, thanks again for watching guys, and I'll see you again soon. Bye now.